Breaking news into NBA Countdown. The Sixers just announced that Joel Embiid suffered a right orbital fracture and a mild concussion in that closeout game victory against Toronto on Thursday.
I think the Sixers can still take either of the first two games in Miami without Embiid.
No.
And this, to me, there is zero chance if Joel Embiid is not healthy.
MVP level season, I agree with you. Heat in 5 is the actual answer to your question.
So for me, the series is over.
While Sixer fans, including myself, were busy celebrating the victory over the Toronto Raptors in Game 6 on Thursday and into Friday, we got some of probably the worst news we could have had, which is that Joel Embiid has a mild concussion and a orbital bone fracture. Joel Embiid is targeting a Game 3 return in Philadelphia, which would be on Friday. After hearing this news, most of the national media, most people just in general, fans of the NBA, fans of basketball, completely wrote the Sixers off. They were already saying that Miami was the favorite to win the series. Without Joel Embiid for some of these games, that the Philadelphia 76ers have absolutely no chance of winning this series. I, however, would completely disagree with that statement, and I'm going to tell you why in this video. Start off, both these teams are coming to this series really injured. Joel Embiid, obviously, with the orbital bone fracture and the mild concussion, that's obviously a big hit for the Philadelphia 76ers, their very best player. The Heat are also very banged up too. They got a ton of guys dealing with injuries. Kyle Lowry is going to miss Game 1 in Miami. Jimmy Butler, Tyler Herro, PJ Tucker, Markieff Morris, all these guys have these little injuries that they're questionable with heading into the first game in Miami tonight. So that's one thing to keep an eye out for when you're looking at the potential of the Philadelphia 76ers potentially stealing a game in Miami in one of these first two games. Like I mentioned before, Joel Embiid is targeting a Game 3 return. Sixers will then be in a position to protect home court if they do steal one of these first two games in Miami. So the question is, can the Sixers end up stealing one of these first two games in Miami? Well, we can look back to a game that was played not too long before the end of the regular season, in which the Philadelphia 76ers beat the Miami Heat without Joel Embiid and without James Harden, in which Tyrese Maxey stepped up big in that game. I believe he scored over 30 points. And in the fourth quarter, he just completely took over down the stretch. Now, obviously, that's just one game isolated by itself, and that doesn't necessarily mean the Sixers are going to be able to win one of these first two games, but it does give you hope that the Sixers have players that are capable of stepping up and potentially stealing one of these first two games. They're going to need their guys to step up. Tyrese Maxey is going to have to step up. Tobias Harris is going to have to step up, but more than anybody else, James Harden is going to have to step up. Doc Rivers has already mentioned that they're going to be running a more James Harden-centric offense, in which he's the point guard, he's scoring more, and he's going to continue to have to facilitate as well. And the ball movement in the Toronto Raptors series was really, really good, and a key to the Philadelphia 76ers offensive success. When they were scoring a lot of points and their offense was looking good, it's because they were moving the ball. And when they didn't look so good, it's because they weren't. So this James Harden-centric offense is not going to only have to feature James Harden scoring more, but they're going to have to continue to move the ball well in this new offense. And something else that they're going to have to do is also push the pace with Embiid out in these first two games. Both these teams, the Heat and the Sixers, are towards the bottom of the league in pace, but it would benefit the Sixers to speed up their pace a little bit in these first two games, as without their all-star center, their best player, it would benefit them to have Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, obviously, and James Harden running in transition a lot more to get easy baskets on the other end, as the Miami Heat defense is one of the very best in the NBA, and that's something that the Sixers are going to have to work around, which leads me into the next point, which is the coaching battle between Doc Rivers and Erik Spoelstra. Obviously, Doc Rivers actually coached a pretty decent series against the Toronto Raptors and was able to make adjustments throughout, although for games 4 and 5, he did not adjust, and it showed, and that's why the Sixers potentially lost those two games, especially Game 5. It was very apparent. So Doc Rivers is going to have to adjust to this Miami Heat defense, which will show James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid winning if he returns a bunch of different looks. Doc Rivers is going to have to adjust, and they're going to have to be able to get into that Miami defense and get into the paint, as they can't just be out on the perimeter shooting threes the entire time. They're going to have to be able to dictate their own offense and be able to control what happens in the game instead of letting the Miami Heat defense control them. One thing that's key to watch is that Miami runs a switch everything style of defense, which the Sixers can use to their advantage and be able to attack some of the weaker defenders on the team like Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson in that game towards the end of the regular season, they kept switching Tyler Herro into Tyrese Maxey, and Maxey was just attacking him, and he was scoring pretty much every single time because Tyler Herro could not guard him. They're going to have to attack some of these weaker Miami Heat defenders, as they have plenty of really, really good defenders, but if they're going to switch everything, the Sixers are going to have to take advantage of that. When you look at the Miami Heat side of things, and they're going to be a very balanced style of offense. They're going to have a lot of guys scoring in double figures. The Sixers are going to have to be able to clamp down on some of these Miami Heat scores, obviously the number one option being Jimmy Butler. But surprisingly enough, the guy that the Sixers might be relying on to slow him down and some of these other players would be Tobias Harris. In that Toronto series, he played some amazing defense on Pascal Siakam, and he was one of the reasons that the Sixers were able to win some of those games, holding Pascal Siakam to low efficiency, low scoring games. Tobias Harris's defense was amazing. He's going to need to continue that and be able to pretty much play the same quality of defense on players like Jimmy Butler, Tyler Herro. He's obviously played with a guy like Jimmy Butler before. He's going to have to be able to stay in front of him, not foul, and try to limit Jimmy Butler's offensive game. But as much as I want to talk about all this other stuff, we all know that the series really hinges on Embiid's return. If the Sixers have a chance, Joel Embiid is going to have to come back at some point in this series. Hopefully, the Sixers are able to split these first two games with Miami and go back to Philadelphia with the series tied 1-1, and hopefully Embiid will be able to come back for that game 3, because if that's what happens, the Sixers are in a really good position, because then you have position to defend home court with Joel Embiid back in the lineup, and then you can then dictate the series from that point forward. But it all hinges on if Joel Embiid returns. So now here it is, my official prediction for this second round playoff series between the Philadelphia 76ers and Miami Heat. I am going to pick the Philadelphia 76ers to win this series in 7 games, despite all the uncertainty, despite everything that's going on, despite Embiid's injury. I think that Embiid returns in Philadelphia. I think we get a split in these first 2 games, especially with the Miami Heat dealing with some of these injuries as well. I think Tyrese Maxey has another amazing performance. James Harden steps up, plays like he did in Game 6 of that Toronto Raptors series. And I think Tyrese Maxey has a huge scoring game as well. And Tobias Harris steps up offensively and keeps up his defensive tear as of recently. And I think the Sixers are in a good position. I think they're going to pull off the upset in this series. They will win this series in 7 games. I think they have the more talented team on paper, and it's all a matter of getting their best player back and holding the fort down while he's gone. I think it's going to be a hard-fought series. I think it's going to go back and forth. There's going to be times when it looks like the Sixers might have the upper hand, times when it looks like the Heat might have the upper hand, but in the end, I ultimately think that the Philadelphia 76ers will win this second-round playoff series in 7 games and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2001. So that's pretty much all I got for this video, guys. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Do you think the Sixers can pull this series out even with Joel Embiid's injury? And subscribe for more Sixers videos and Eagles videos if you did enjoy this one, and drop a like down below to help push this content out to other people. And with that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this video. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.